So let's talk about Fable. Or more specifically, let's talk about Light of Amala, the opening number. When Heather and I first wrote this, we knew that it had a really big lift. I mean, like the opening song of any musical has got a lot of work to do, right? You have to set up a sense of history of what has happened to your setting and your characters before the show starts. You have to introduce your characters and the setting. And you have to set up basically a mood and a feel and give a sense of what to expect to the audience. And we had all of that to do. And also we had to introduce a land called Amala that no one had ever heard of before. And actually, Amala itself, at the time of the opening of the musical, is made up of 3 and really 4 different lands, each with its own very distinct personality. And we portray that through style and dress and musical style as well. But when it came to showing Amala itself, we decided to use music that was inspired by West Africa. So you'll see that I'm surrounded by a few different examples of hand drums and other percussion that are all going to make an appearance in this piece, Light of Amala. And we wanted this number to represent a call to assembly in which the Amalans are called to gather in like a central square or a meeting place to hear the story and the history of Amala as a way of also presenting it to the audience. You'll hear a lot of layering of these various instruments in an almost repetitive and meditative fashion. After all, so we were thinking that we're writing a song about light, and white light, for example, is made up of every color that the eye can see and then some. So how do you represent everything, basically? I kept thinking of a quote by Gustav Mahler, the symphonic composer, who said that a symphony must be like the world. It must contain everything. And in some ways, that's kind of a funny quote on its face, but that really is sort of what we wanted to convey. So I wanted to put this video together as we're working on the latest version of these tracks. And in this one in particular, you could see what's involved in starting to build up a song like this. So when you're writing a song that has to contain everything, well, it has to start with something. So a good place to start is a little shaker here that you'll see in a few seconds that I'm going to record and lay down so that I can listen to that as I add all of the other instruments to this. And I don't know, it should be a fun experiment, so I hope you enjoy it. So, as you can see, that gets boring pretty quick. So let's add a couple more things in there. What you're going to hear next is recording some bongos over here. And this little guy, or kind of big guy, which is called a frame drum, which has a lot of different tones that it can make itself. So that's going to add some complexity to the mix and get us a little bit further towards the overall feel that we want to present in this song. For the next step, I decided we would add a little bit of ear candy to the mix. And to that end, I'm going to be using this little item here, which is called a rain stick for obvious reasons. and also a little bit of flute. I am not a flautist, so I will be playing that part on a synth, as you'll see. So for this next part, you'll have to indulge me in a little bit of music theory wonkiness. I had mentioned that we wanted this track to have a repetitive and sort of meditative nature to it, but at the same time, we didn't want it to be too repetitive, if that makes any sense. So the next instrument we're going to be adding here is a West African instrument called a balafon, which is sort of a gourd resonated xylophone. And we broke this instrument out into two separate parts. Even though they're playing on top of each other, they're of differing lengths. And what that accomplishes is kind of this sense of like tension and then resolve, because the two parts like sort of drift apart a little bit and then they come back together and meet every few measures. So what you'll hear first is, I guess, the bass balafon, and it is a repeating pattern that recurs every two measures of this piece, and that sounds like this. Now, on top of that part, we're going to add a second balafon line, a pattern that repeats every 16 notes. And given that this piece is in 6/8, that actually kind of brings it to what, a measure and a third, I guess. So basically, these two parts are going to meet every four measures, I think is the case. But anyway, why don't you hear this part by itself first, and then I'll give you a listen as to what they sound like together, and you'll see if you can hear the two conflicting patterns at the same time. Okay, so here's the two balafon parts together. I'm going to partner them with the shaker just so you could get a sense of the tempo and the overall feel of the piece, and see if you could discern the two separate parts and listen for when they come together every four measures or so. All right, so I think you can see we're definitely setting up a mood with all of the instruments that we've added so far. Admittedly, one goal Heather and I really had for this song was to really just blow the audience away, being the first number in Fable. To that end, what we are still lacking is some heft in this piece. And that's going to come courtesy of this guy here, this djembe. And also I have set up my drum kit to play some very kind of big, heavy, tribal sounding drums. So you hear what those sound like on their own. And then I'm going to give you one last listen to all of this and all of these layers put together. And that's going to get us part way to building this very complex, but I hope you agree, kind of fun song. And there will be another video later about some of the next steps and the instruments and the voices.